Now, I love the speed of the results that I can get from Mocha Pro's Object Brush and Matte Assist ML. But when I'm dealing with a smaller object in the frame, or maybe a more complex object where there's little holes, sometimes those can be a little bit tricky to get the matte that I need without a little bit more manual adjustment. There's a matte feature that's going to help us to deal with those types of problems, and there's another way that we can get better, faster matte refine out as well. Okay, so here's my first shot. Now, when it comes to Mocha Pro's AI masking tools, it goes through a few different stages. We use the Object Brush to create our initial spline. We use the Matte Assist ML to then propagate that matte across the entire shot. And we use Matte Refine to make nice, pretty edges. So I'm going to select my Object Brush, and you notice we have Auto ROI turned on. ROI stands for Region of Interest. So this just means as I move my Object Brush over, I'm going to be getting some better edges because it's not going to be passing the entire image to the model. Now, let me break down the reason quickly why it works like this. Now, I'm working on a high resolution image. I believe it's 4K, it might be higher. And so that the models that we're using for Matte Assist ML actually work on regular graphics cards, you don't need horrible, big, giant monsters. What happens is that they are limited in the resolution that they want to sort of take in. This means that usually the image itself, if it's beyond the size that the model wants, things are downscaled and then stuff's upscaled again. In an image like this, where we're only really interested in, him here, why should we be feeding that whole frame into the model? So that's the first bit where we create the initial frame with the Object Brush. Let's take a look at the next shot and see how we can get that matte propagation working, taking into account those same model limitations. We've got a man at this absolutely gorgeous location looking out. It is such a grand location that he is sort of quite small in the frame to give us that sense of wonder. Let's see what happens when I use my Object Brush to create a mask out of him. So this looks pretty good, yeah? Well, let's zoom in a little bit. And he is masking out and doing all the things that I want him to do. Let's just render this all forwards. But you can also see that the results that we're getting are not quite lined up to the edges. They're there. If we were doing like a rough mask, this would be absolutely fine. But they're not the sort of smooth curves that we would get if we were doing this manually. And that's, being the trade-off. It's like, do we do this fast and automatically, or do we do this manually? And as we play this back, you see this is a pretty good mask, all things considered. But it is sort of struggling a little bit with the hole inside there. In fact, I haven't rendered the first bits there, but it's fine. And it's also not quite got the little gap there as well. And to change it, I am going to go into the classic mode because all of the advanced tools are always handled in the classic workspace. So if you used to working in essentials, sometimes you're going to have to pop into classic. I'm going to duplicate this up and let's give this a different color so that we'll start to be able to see the difference between these two in a second. And I'm going to call this one search area. Down to the matte controls, and all I'm going to do is turn on apply search area. This will invalidate our matte or our matte assist, so you can see that the line is now dotted. If I were to export and save this, the matte would still work. It would just show us the dotted line, but the dotted line tells us we need to render something again. So let's just render this frame. We can see that we got a better hole in the middle. Something is looking different here as well. So let's compare and contrast these two. So I'm going to give this original one a brighter color now so we can see that. So there's the original in white, sharp edges, and then there's our apply search area one, the auto one, in yellow. This is with a an auto search area, so we haven't touched any of the actual search area yet. And let's make a duplicate of our search area. I'm going to change the color of this again so that we can disambiguate. That's a good word. I love that. Disambiguate the difference between these the three. And I'm going to change up the search area here. So this is going to determine how big or wide that search area is to go around here. So if I know that there's not a lot of movement, around here, what I can do is I can take the search area even smaller. Like, he's not moving very far, so we probably won't have to search too far. And again, it invalidates the old curve. Let's render that one up again, and we get another result. Let's see if I can find a different color. So we've got the original in white. That's without any of the search area stuff. We've got the auto search area with green, and then we've got a manual one with yellow. And we take a look there. That's got like a really nice outline of the hand that we weren't getting before, and it also picks up that little gap there. We also go right in the gap around by the legs, and if we take a look around the whole thing, this is looking pretty good. This is like the closest that we've got so far. Let's play our map back. I think that's looking really nice. The other place where this same idea comes into is when we're looking at matte refine. There's a parameter called Auto ROI that is going to do a similar sort of thing, but for the matte refine here. So let's look at our second clip. And all I've done with this one is use the object brush to give us a single frame, rendered that out. I've also turned off the overlays so that we can see this a little bit clearer now. All right, and if I turn on the black and white overlays instead, you can see that the matte that we get straight out of the MattSist ML is this, binary matte. It's either black or it's white. And this is great when we've got the smooth edges that we had in the previous example, but with something like hair, not particularly great. This is when we have a look at our refine layer map, and immediately we get something that looks a lot nicer here. And you can choose what model we're using depending on, of course, what you're looking for. Kind of like the sharper edges on this one. And let's duplicate this layer up, because there's something else we can do, of course. And if I take a look down here, we have an Auto ROI. So if I turn on Auto ROI and we take a little look here, you can see that it's cutting off some of the elements of the hair. But what it's also doing is it's making sure that we don't have any little sparkles happening, that aren't connected to the original shape. So Auto ROI gets rid of those sparkles and only focuses on the main shape. There is a slight issue when we have someone with long, lovely hair that we want to keep in. Now, is it a big issue? Not really, because all I need to do here is come and take my ROI and expand that outwards. And you can see as I expand that out, we immediately see all of the hair details that we actually need. And once I'm happy with that, I'll just render that all the way through. And that will give me my nice refined matte that doesn't have any sort of sparklies in the background. And there we have it. Now, obviously, if your subject is big in the frame, then the kind of different results you're going to get is probably not as big as if the object that you're trying to get is a lot smaller in it. But now you know what to look for. If you want any more tips and tricks about MattSist ML or Mocha Pro in general, obviously let me know in the comments below. My name is Ben Brownlee for Boris Effects, and I'll see you again very soon.